It all started in a forgotten rural town encircled by dense forests and an unending fog that never seemed to clear on an unusually cold October evening. Our narrative centers on Daniel Cross, a reserved man in his early 30s who recently moved after receiving an isolated home from an uncle he had never met. The weather-worn, ivy-covered house stood lonesomely at the edge of a dense woodland, seemingly being reclaimed by nature itself. Regarding that location, locals whispered that it ought to have been demolished years ago. They described nighttime noises, flickering lights when no one was home, and shadows that moved without a source. Daniel, however, was not a believer in ghost stories. Broken relationships, a failed career, and a strong sense of guilt over something he never discussed were all part of his painful past, which he was fleeing. The house represented a fresh start for him. He only packed a journal, a camera, and a suitcase. However, the atmosphere changed as soon as he stepped through the door. It was charged and heavy. The house itself seemed to have been anticipating it. Daniel started filming his new life that night. With a serene, almost aloof tone, he described each room as he went through it to the camera. There were cracks in the walls. Every step made the floors creak. He noticed strange symbols carved in a spiral pattern into the floorboards and a rocking chair that was slowly swaying in place in the attic. He did not give it much thought. Old homes always had peculiarities, didn't they? But at precisely 3:17 a.m., a long, purposeful dragging sound from above startled him awake. Daniel's heart pounding, he reached for a flashlight and went back to the attic. The rocker was no longer moving. It was freezing outside. The attic door slammed behind him with strange force as he moved forward, leaving him in utter darkness. His flashlight flickered and then died when he clicked it. Quiet. Then, breathing. Not his own. It was directly behind him, slow and deep. He turned but saw nothing. Nevertheless, he sensed something. Observing, Daniel ran downstairs, pale and shaken, when the door finally creaked open on its own. That night's video was shaky, warped, and nearly tainted. However, he felt a chill when he watched it back. A tall, motionless figure, pitch black, motionless, merely observing him, was barely visible in the corner of the frame. The odd happenings became more intense as the days went by. The lack of humidity caused the mirrors to fog over. When he was by himself, footsteps reverberated through the corridors. Even after checking the wiring, lights continued to flicker. The house was alive, but not in a cozy way. Silent and patient, it resembled the predator. Daniel started recording more frequently and frantically. He attempted to explain the increasing feeling of dread, but every time he viewed the video, new strangeness emerged, objects moving slightly between cuts, whispers picked up by the microphone, and blurs in the corners. Additionally, the same dark silhouette appeared slightly closer in each clip. Daniel began looking into the history of the house out of curiosity and desperation. At that point, he learned the truth about Gregory Cross, his uncle. Before going missing in 1996, Gregory, a once respected scholar, had developed an obsession with occult rituals and obscure texts. The town records ended suddenly. Neighbors said they'd hear chanting at night, see strange lights through the attic windows, and once, hear a scream that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Daniel dug through the house and discovered an ancient wooden box in the study, tucked under the floorboards. Photographs, a journal, and a dagger with a bone handle are inside. Gregory's last entries were disorganized, full of diagrams and phrases that seemed to be repeated over and over again. The door opens in darkness. Blood has memory. Below, the observer waits. Daniel had a dream about the attic that night. However, it wasn't a room in the dream. It was a mouth. A fleshy tunnel, muttering his name in his own voice. He was sweating when he woke up, and his bed was now covered in the stains from the attic floor. The following morning, Daniel awoke confused, his clothes soaked with perspiration, and the journal still open on his chest, pages fluttering from an unnatural wind inside the house. He was no longer able to distinguish between reality and his dreams. Now there was a pulse in the house, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat and reverberated through the floors. He made the decision to face the attic one last time because he was determined to regain control. However, upon ascending the stairs, he discovered a narrow passageway carved through the distant wall, which had not previously existed. Outward, the drywall was shattered, as though something had appeared instead of being found. Beyond it, the darkness bled cold air. Daniel set his camera to record and entered, defying all urges to turn around. Narrow and lined with strange markings, the same symbols from Gregory's journal, the tunnel's walls were bare of splintered wood. Approximately 30 steps later, the tunnel led to a secret room that was round, silent, and incredibly deep under the foundation. An old, cracked mirror sat in the middle of the room, dripping condensation despite the dry air. It was surrounded by items that made Daniel's stomach turn: pieces of teeth, fingernails, old photos with the edges burned off, and a tiny wooden box that was exactly like the one he had discovered upstairs. The mirror responded to his approach with movement rather than a reflection. It stirred in some way. He saw only shadows at first. Then his own face, but a different one. The eyes were sunken and hollow. It had pale skin. And the silhouette from his video was the same person behind him. Now taller. Nearer. When Daniel staggered back, the mirror broke, not from impact, but rather as though something had knocked from inside. A low hum, akin to chanting, muffled and layered in dozens of voices, filled the room as the ground shook slightly. The house appeared to envelop him as he snatched up the second box and ran out of the tunnel. The doors moved. Walls had breath. The corridor no longer led to its previous location. Daniel went back to his bedroom and opened the second box. A roll of 8mm film and a note written in Gregory's desperate handwriting read, "The ritual was never completed. It picked you if you see this. Before the 7th night, burn the mirror. Don't talk to the voice. It will be deceptive." Daniel's hands shook. He tallied the days. It would be the 7th night. He made the decision to stop it. He poured lighter fluid on the attic floor and turned to face the mirror, which now glowed as if it were alive. A voice called out as he lifted the match. Gentle. Gnome. His mom's. Then his sister's. Next, his own. The mirror pleaded with him not to destroy it, offering forgiveness, answers, and even peace. He paused, just a moment. And that was sufficient. Something came through as the mirror broke inward, imploding instead of shattering. A cold, faceless mass of bone and black, constantly shifting limbs. It entered through his mouth, eyes, and ears and rushed him like smoke. Recording static, the camera dropped to the ground before going black. Daniel vanished from view. Later, it was discovered that the video had been uploaded in pieces to several anonymous accounts, none of which could be identified. Daniel makes an appearance in a final, brief clip. He is grinning while standing in the attic, his eyes completely black. The mirror is whole again behind him, waiting, observing. 3 months later, the house was sold to a different distant relative. Gregory Cross was unknown to them as well. They desired a new beginning as well.